Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I can identify with Jesus this morning, not because I can calm the wind or the waves or really anything else particularly Jesus-y. No, I can identify with Jesus because he sleeps through the whole storm. And I have slept through an earthquake. To be fair, it wasn't a particularly high magnitude earthquake. In Peru, where I was living at the time, they described it not as a terremoto, but as a temblor, a little tremble. But the point still stands that while the earth was shaking, I was in my third-story bedroom, sleeping soundly. I came down the next morning for breakfast. My host family realized I had no idea what had happened during the night and promptly decided there was something the matter with me. But now here's where Jesus and I part ways. I can sleep through an earthquake because I sleep like the dead. It is hard to wake me up. Some of you can attest to that, having had the unfortunate experience of sleeping next door to me on an overnight retreat and hearing the alarm go off again and again and again. Actually, I've been told you can't even make me move in my sleep. Frustrated loved ones have compared trying to move a sleeping Ginna to wrestling a sack of flour or a bag of cement. Jesus may also have slept like a bag of cement. Mark does not share those perhaps amusing details, how to wake a sleeping Jesus. But he does tell us that while the storm is raging outside, Jesus is peacefully asleep in the boat. Now, to be fair, maybe this has something to do with who Jesus is. He is not a sleepy sack of potatoes, but rather the Lord of all creation, which is clearly a part of what Mark wants to demonstrate to us, the readers. With just a few words, Jesus calms the wind and the waves. Peace, be still. And while this is a miracle in its own right, there's a larger symbolic meaning that would not be lost on Jesus's disciples or on Mark's first readers. In the Hebrew scriptures, there is only one who has the power to move over the watery chaos and restore the order of creation. That one is God. We hear it in the first chapter of Genesis. A wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was. God made the dome of the sky and separates the waters above the earth from the waters below, ensuring the victory of creation over the formless void, of order over chaos, of life over death. And then again, we hear it in Exodus when God parts the waters of the Red Sea so the Hebrew children can pass through on the dry land. It's there in this morning's reading from Job. God says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb of creation? Who said, 'Thus far shall you come and no further, and here shall your proud waves be stopped?'" We hear it again and again in the joyful songs of the book of Psalms. They cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out from their distress. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. God is the only one who has power over the waters, who can speak into the world of chaos and restore the comfort of order. At the end of this story, the disciples ask, "Who is this that even the winds and the sea obey him?" But to Mark's readers, the answer is obvious. If Jesus can calm the stormy waters, then Jesus is Lord. This is the central proclamation of the Christian faith. And so this miracle serves as a comfort in many ways. A comforting reminder that the God we worship, the God revealed in Jesus Christ, has the power of order that has emerged from chaos, of light that has triumphed over darkness. We are told that Jesus is able to calm even the most turbulent storms we face in this world and in our own lives. Except, what about those waters that aren't calmed? What about the storms that won't be stilled? What about when the cancer comes back? What about when the infection spreads? What about the relationship that remains estranged, the abuser that keeps on abusing with seeming impunity? What about the hope for peace, justice, joy that just never comes? We can pray, and we do pray as hard as we know how, that Jesus will calm the storm. But what do we do when the boat sinks anyway? I think it's important for us as a community of faith to talk about these things, to admit that sometimes Jesus doesn't come through. And sometimes we're devastated by that. At least that's been my experience. Maybe it's been yours too. If Jesus is Lord, if God has the power to create order out of chaos, then why are there storms that are still raging? Sometimes we get this message that good Christians aren't supposed to ask these questions. that in some way they make our faith less or weak. But that is a complete misconception, a perversion even of what faith is all about. Faith is not and has never been about believing the right things about God, about understanding Jesus as if Jesus were someone we could understand. Faith is not about seeing things through the correct worldview. No, faith is a life lived in intimate, trusting relationship with God. And relationships are much more complicated than belief. Faith is making an effort to connect with Jesus because relationships require work and effort. Sometimes faith looks like going down in the boat, waking up a soundly sleeping Jesus and saying, "Why are you sleeping? Do you not care that we are perishing? The storms, they are raging in the world and in my life, and you who supposedly have the power to calm the sea, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you helping us? Isn't there something you can do, Jesus?" Sometimes Jesus doesn't still the storm. Sometimes, for all we can tell, God still seems fast asleep. I don't know why, and I won't pretend to. If I had to give you my best guess, I would say there are times when the powers of chaos do seem to get the final word. But I know this: a relationship built out of faith in Jesus Christ means that we are never alone in the boat. Jan Holton, a professor at Yale Divinity School, says that in those moments of great suffering, of tragic loss, of unspeakable injustice, we look to Jesus for an answer, and well, we should. But Jesus's answer to us is often the same as the words that he speaks to the wind and the waves. Peace, be still. Perhaps, Jan says, the object of Jesus's command with these words is the disciples' fear as much as the elements of nature. If we believe that this is a story about Jesus's ability to fix the chaos of our lives, then we will miss out on what it reveals about faith and our relationship of trust with God. Peace, be still. Jesus asks us to have faith that whatever it is that threatens us in the day or keeps us awake at night, it cannot overcome God's power to bring peace and strength. Maybe that's not the answer that we want, but it's the answer we receive. And part of the work of that relationship we build with Christ of faith is trusting that this answer is enough. Jesus doesn't say there's nothing to be afraid of. He says, do not be afraid because I am with you. He doesn't promise a life without suffering, grief, or pain. He promises to go with us on that journey so that whatever storms blow our way, we will not face them alone. Jesus is asleep in the boat. Maybe because he just sleeps like a sack of potatoes. Maybe because he wants the disciples to learn that they can come wake him when they feel afraid. Or maybe because deep down in his soul, Jesus knows something that he wants us to learn. The fundamental truth of our faith. That, as Julian of Norwich so famously put it, whatever comes our way, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Thanks be to God. Amen.